Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience podcast. Mike has over 31 years experience in real estate, finance, and investing. He's passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
So what can you expect from the Mike Litton Experience? You can expect stories that will inspire, motivate, advice that will sharpen your focus, and expert information on real estate, finance, and market conditions.
Working, but studying, learning new skills like building a website, writing a blog. I've never done all these things, and I just taught myself how to do that. And now I'm helping other people building websites. Just if they need help, I'm just love to help other people build what they love to do as well. So that's cool. What I really started to use, and I saw that it was going to happen. So I bought I bought a nice little table on my balcony with a nice chair so I could sit and read there far better than just inside. I bought a lot of books, some courses. So I really prepared myself for the lockdown, and I made sure that I made the best use of it.
Yeah. So instead of climbing the walls, at least you got something productive done, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
That's cool. So after the lockdown, after everybody's back and all that kind of stuff, you're still in Dubai, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So what was that like when you went back to work and got back into the swing of things? So you were then in Dubai for how long after the shutdown?
I was there for 4 years at that time. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were there another year after the shutdown.
Well, maybe a little bit less, maybe 4.5 years. I think I left that spring after that summer after the lockdown. Yeah.
Gotcha. So just a few months after?
Yeah.
So where did you go after that?
After that, and that's where it kind of started to shift. I remember one day driving back from work and the school, and I made this kind of elevator pitch for my life. I said, I don't want to have to work, but I want to have the freedom of time and location to do what I'm passionate about and help as many people as I can. And that's where really all of my mindset and a lot of my decisions started to change. So after leaving Dubai, I made a plan for myself. One of my best friends lived in the guy who opened the store, actually, that from going to Spain. He was living in Bend, Oregon at that time. And my plan was always to go visit him. He's from the Netherlands as well, but I wanted to go visit him after I finished. So that's what I did. And I sold everything that I owned in Dubai. I left with just a backpack on my bag and another backpack just for my small stuff. And that's everything I still own. That's everything that I still own. I don't need much more, which is great and absolutely freeing. So that's what I did. I went to Bend, stayed there for 2.5 months, and then I traveled around to Mexico, Costa Rica, and later on even in Argentina and all of those, Chile, Ecuador. And I did that as people might know, as a beginning entrepreneur. And I was living off my savings from Dubai. You try to live as cheap as you can so you can prolong your time, so you can build what you need to do. So I was traveling as a house sitter and a pet sitter, and I was looking after dogs and cats in great houses so I can just work and do my things and still enjoy the country as much as I could. So I tried to combine those two things. I love animals, so that was great. And having dogs is also nice to get to know the neighborhood and, walk them, which is great. But in the meantime, I was able to focus and build, the company that, Via Stoic that we have right now, where we do the coaching and started to build that out. And that was a great moment in time for me to travel and to also see that I can travel and work wherever I need. So that's where I'm really setting myself up to.
Why did you choose South America to travel to?
My main reason was because of Spanish, the Spanish language. I wanted to learn the different dialects, the different accents, and see if I could really improve on my language skills, but also because I've never been there. And it felt like a culture that I really wanted to enjoy. I've been to Asia, I've been to the Middle East. When you live in Dubai, you can travel around there easier, but never been there. So really appealed to me to go and spend some time over there.
Yeah. And you're glad you did. I mean, it was a great experience, it sounds like.
Oh, it was amazing. I still in touch with some people. In Mexico, I was looking after a house with, a little finca with 5 houses, and homes, and the lady, the owner, went away, but her mom stayed there, and she was an 88-year-old lady from Florida, originally from Peru. And we had, such a great time cooking ceviche, and I'm still in touch with her. And hopefully by the end of, in the end of this year, hopefully I'll go back to the US and visit her and some other people I have there. And but yeah, it was a great time. I'm still in touch with a lot of these people. And
So how
they
long
asked
were
me
you in
back.
South America?
I did 2 stints. First time I was there for about 4 or 5 months. Then I had to go back because it was my parents' 50th wedding anniversary, and obviously you want to be there for that. And I like being in the Netherlands in the summer and the spring. And then I went back for another 8 months to Argentina, Panama, and one of the guys that I'm working with, he lives in Panama, and I spent some time with them. Which is also great to meet people in real life that online where you do your work with.
Yeah, that's cool. So after after South America, Panama, Argentina, right? After that experience, where do you go from there?
I went back to my parents. As I said, I wanted to have the freedom of location and time, and my parents are getting older. And as a teacher, you have limited holidays. It's nice that you have long holidays, but you can only go when they are there. Otherwise, you have to go on paid leave. And during my time in Dubai, one of my uncles passed away, and I wasn't able to go there. And I said, I don't want to experience that. And with COVID, that something can happen with your parents. So I figured I want to be able to go there more often. So I went to my parents and I helped them around the house to build up, to renovate some things. And my dad had a vineyard, and he took that out because it was getting too tough for him. So we redid the garden and all of that stuff. So I went there, and my sister was living there as well, and she bought a van, and she said, I'm going to go to Spain, and I'm in Spain at the moment. And she, with her dog, and she asked me, do you want to join me? It's like, yeah, why not? So now we drove down to Spain, and we rented the place to pass the winter here, where it's a little bit warmer and sunnier. And then in a few weeks, we'll be going back to go to my parents. And then from there, again, as I said, I have a couple of events coming up, and I've got a couple of things that I'm going to do. And I'm going to be teaching a Stoic week in the Netherlands during that time. And I've got some other things going on. And then after the summer, I'll probably go to the US and again to South America. And just
That's cool.
Travel around a bit. Yeah.
So you're in Spain now. What city are you in?
I'm just outside of Malaga.
Okay.
In a little town called Rincón de la Victoria, which is great, just at the beach. Every day, every morning, take long walks on the beach, and it's lovely.
So you're hanging out in Spain while the winter's going on in Netherlands, and then you're going to go back after that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
that's cool, man. That's cool. Good for you. Okay, so let's talk about your coaching, because we're up to today, right? We're up to. So let's talk about coaching, and let's talk about Stoicism. So when did you discover Stoicism, I guess is the best way to put it, right? And then what made you decide that you wanted to coach it?
Well, during as my relationship was breaking down and I started living on myself, I had a great friend who introduced me to a lot of good books, which is not if anyone's looking for a great hobby, reading or listening to audiobooks, that's just such a life changer. Yeah. And at one point, I diagnosed myself with an existential crisis. I found a book, Introductions to Existentialism, and that's where I found the Stoics. And I've learned about them a little bit before, but this is the moment. And when you ask people, when did you find Stoicism or philosophy, right? Usually that happens when they are going through a tough time. It's not a lot of time when you meet someone who's winning, right? It's like, I've got to improve on myself. No, it's like when you're in a tough moment, that's when usually people try to find something else. And this is when they really spoke to me.
Yeah, you start questioning things, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you start to find for guides or answers. And I found it in especially for me, Epictetus, it's kind of a verbal slap in the face, I like to call it. He spoke to me in a direct way and talking about, you need to take responsibility. If you want to improve your life. And I was a person who tended to wait for things to happen, or then everything will click. But if you really want to make something out of your life, if you really want to live it the way you live, you've got to take responsibility and you've got to make it happen. And that's where it really started to click. And that's where I just went on full on, everything was Stoicism, and I read everything I could, but also I really tried to apply it to life. And that's where I made that click when I said I wanted to start coaching and helping other people. And again, first I built up my own life, and after a few years of doing that and talking online with people, with Bryce and Brendan from Via Stoic, where I met them on X. I don't know if you know the Spaces on X. These are live conversations where people come together and just share their thoughts. And we hosted these spaces on Stoicism week in, week out, and that's where we really started. And that's also the roots of the podcast. We later put that onto for the podcast, but that's really where it started for me, to see the impact that you could have sharing these stories, sharing your personal experience, like on your podcast as well, where you have people share their own stories. And it's incredible to see how many links there are to other people's stories, other people's paths throughout their lives, and you can take those out and you can see that it's possible. If it is possible for someone else, then it's possible for me as well.
So our listeners have been giving us feedback, and they're telling us that these hundreds now of life stories that we have on our podcast, they find something about their life, that guest's life, that they connect with. And it could be anything, right? It could be that PE was their favorite subject in right in high school. It could be the girls was their favorite subject, right? Or soccer, right? Could be anything, right? But what's amazing is, and this is what we're finding, and this is sort of like a running thread through this podcast, is people, no matter where they are in the world, and I mentioned to you, we're in 58 countries, they're all looking for a connection. They're all looking to connect. And so they're constantly looking, and the feedback we're getting is they're hearing people's life stories, they're connecting with them, and it's inspiring and motivating them to go out and start coaching, right? Or go out and, one couple decided to get married. I mean, it's crazy. We probably have had 50 podcasts started just because of our podcast, right? Yes. Because people look at me and they're like, if that idiot can do this, I can do it, right? I mean, that's kind of the cool thing. So it's amazing how the way people connect and how they're searching. They're literally searching for that, and it's really cool. It's really cool that people can kind of coalesce and come together and find that. So you're studying Stoicism. You've got this thing on Spaces, right, where you guys are talking about different lessons and different things, right? And at some point, you make a decision to get into coaching. Talk about, because there are people that are listening to this, Benny, that are thinking about getting into coaching. They might be in coaching, right? And they want to be like you when they grow up, like me. I want to be like you when I grow up, right? So talk about the mindset and sort of the thought process of becoming a coach. Well, how did that happen?
As I said, I think as a teacher, you're already part of coach. Because you have to listen to your students. It's not just about giving them information. It's about how you give them information and what they need. So you have to listen a lot. You have to pay attention. And I've taught from 3-year-olds to adults, and especially with the adults, it wasn't a lot of the time. I wasn't teaching English. I was just listening to them and asking them questions and obviously giving them feedback on the language. But that's where I felt like I really had a good skill of listening to people and being, again, curious about them, but also giving the time and attention that they said, okay, I really value this and I feel comfortable with you. And I've talked to some other people and I wanted to move away from teaching. And that's where I first did some coaching courses. I didn't connect it with Stoicism at the time yet, but I did some coaching courses. And at one point during one of the spaces, we had an author quite famous in Stoic world, Donald Robertson. He joined us in the spaces and we talked to him and we kind of, been in touch with him. And he was a CBT, cognitive behavioral therapist. And that's where I felt like, oh, there's more that we can do with this philosophy. There's still a level extra. And that's where I started to connect that coaching experience or that background that I had with those courses with Stoic philosophy. Yeah. And it's interesting, they say, like, you got to find a niche, but I think the niche found me because Stoicism was so ingrained in my life. And I felt it was such a natural aspect of who I am that I also, and again, connected with my skills of as a teacher to learn how to explain things in a way that people can understand, really listening to your student and see where are they, what do they need. Yeah. That's where I felt like I can connect these two and I can add it. I can create a product. I can give a service to people to really help them live the life. And that last part, that when we started going on these spaces and meeting people and having them share their stories and talk about it, we got such a great feedback from them saying, wow, this really changed my life. Just people listening to me or just listening, again, as you said, to other people's story, that really changed my life. And that's why I just felt I need to do more with this. There's something else I can do. And that's where we started to offer the Stoic coaching services, to really show people that you can use this ancient philosophy that's been around for 2,500 years to improve your life right now.
Right.
It's not easy, but it is possible.
Yeah. And there are a lot of people, and I let me ask you this. Have you found that there are a lot of people out there that can use this? Like they can use a better knowledge and an application of this philosophy? I mean, personally, I come across people every day that could use what you're teaching and what you're coaching, right? Because they're lost, man. They're out there and they're just fledgling, I mean, there are people, and I don't want to make this overly dramatic, but there are people out there who are so lost that you could potentially save their lives because of, you with me? Because of this. And Scott Mann talks about it in his book, Nobody's Coming to Save You. It's called The Churn. And we're in the middle of this thing called the churn, and people are looking they're looking for some sort of direction. They're looking for something that they can sort of grab onto. You know what I mean? Because they're feeling like they're fledgling. So at some point you decide as a coach to start a podcast. Talk about sort of the thought process and the mind, where your mindset needed to be for you to decide to do the podcast.
It's exactly what you were talking about. It's because we wanted to provide a service to people who are lost, and we are not necessarily, and it's not my goal to turn people into Stoics, but I'd like to motivate people to find their own philosophy of life, where they can take maybe parts of Stoicism, but where they question their lives, where they ask themselves, why am I doing this? What is important to me? What are my values and my principles? And we think that Stoic philosophy provides a lot of it. There's a reason why cognitive behavioral therapy is founded on Stoic philosophy. It's based on your thoughts, your beliefs, your emotions, and your actions, how they control and they link up to each other. And that's where we felt like after the experience on the spaces. And the crazy thing is, like, after the space over 2.5 hours where you talk, me and Bryce would call each other, and we'd talk for another hour and a half on this on the philosophy. And we figured we need to do something with this. There is great content here, and there's a lot of people who want to listen to this and who can get something out of it. And that's where we created a podcast, just to put it out there because X or Twitter back in the day, it's limited. You have to find your audience, but we wanted to expand it to a worldwide audience, and that's what we're doing right now, with real practical, personal examples of how this can be applied to different scenarios that again, as you said, some people, they might listen to part of this episode and say, wow, this really affected me. And other people do something completely different. So that's why I want to make a wide range of topics, but not in that academic sense, but in a real practical, life grounded sense of, this is what the philosophy is about, and this is how you can use it. And it's for everybody. It's not just for people who studied philosophy. No, you can do this right now. And as you said, I do think that a lot of people need it, because people are lost, and people need some kind of direction. And the greatest compass that we have to find a direction is within ourselves. And yes, we can have some people to guide us, to show us, a mentor here and there, but at the end of the day, we need to do it, and we need to listen to that inner guide that we have.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that's what's beautiful about what you're doing, right? You're getting people, you're sort of prompting people through your coaching and through your podcast and through spaces, right? To actually start to re-examine things. Because really, honestly, there are a ton of people out there that are fledgling. There are a ton of people out there that they just don't have, they're like a ship without a rudder, right? They just don't have a direction. And really, the direction is inside them. They can find it. They just need somebody like you to help them find it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's the problem with that is that one of the most difficult explorations is going into the self. I think that's why a lot of people want to tell other people how to live and influence there and get just from all these sources from outside, all these distractions, like, this is how you need to live. If you do this, you're going to be happy. If you do this, you're going to be happy. But it really starts, and Socrates started with this, right? The father of philosophy, a great source of inspiration for the Stoics. He said, know yourself. Yeah. That's where it all starts. You can't build a house on a broken foundation, and the foundation is you. So that's where it all starts.
Yeah, and we use the Socratic method every day. right? Every single day. Thank God for Socrates, right?
Yeah.
So real quick, what was the single most important thing you've learned so far being a coach?
I think the best thing is that everybody has a unique story, but there's always so many things that come together where we struggle with external things. And again, this is a Stoic thing where we forget about focusing on ourselves and focus too much on what other people think of us and how we really want to live. But for me, one of the most important things that I've learned is that people need to have attention and to have someone to listen to them. And I was reading a book, the Socrates Express by Eric Weiner, and he talked about Simone Weil, who was a French philosopher, and she said, "Attention is love." If you give people attention, and again, this is something that we lack nowadays. A lot of people have their earbuds in when we're talking to other people, or just not really looking at other people. So as a coach, that's what I've learned. If you give someone their full attention, really listen to what they're saying and be there for them, that is already such a big part of being a good coach, or just, being a good human being for someone else.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. Totally agree with that. So same question about your podcast. What's the single most important thing you've learned being a podcast host?
That I can do it. And this is something that I've learned from all of these other things, building a website, building the podcast, starting a company. If you want to do something, you can learn. You can learn anything you set your mind to. And that's what I've learned from hosting a podcast. As I said, I come from a very tiny town. At the beginning of the episode, we talked about that. And I would have never thought that I would be in a podcast, talking, for example, to you from Spain, from someone in the US. That was unthinkable. All these gadgets, we didn't have any of that when we grew up. So now when you look at it, we all have the skills to learn. Again, if you're curious, if you're open-minded, you can learn anything you want, but also to outsource the things that you don't like.
Right.
So the editing, all of that stuff, I knew that wasn't something that I want to spend my time on, and other people did. So we decided to outsource that. And beyond that, it's just great to talk about philosophy and to learn yourself, to learn more. As I say, right, as you teach, you get to learn more. And that's what I've really appreciated from that experience.
Yeah. And a big part of this whole thing is taking care of yourself, right? People don't do that. They have this thing in their mind, this sort of, I call it the lying loop, but it's this loop of lies, right? And it's okay, I need to take care of somebody else instead of me. I need to take care of them instead of me. There's a reason why when you're on a plane and they're going through the safety stuff on the plane, they tell you that if that oxygen mask drops, put it on yourself first and then help somebody. You've got to take care of you before you can take care of everybody else, right? And yeah, there's a little bit of selfishness in there, but really it's about, I'm not going to be able to pay attention and or love that person if I'm not in a place where I can do it. Does that make sense? So that's a big part of Stoicism, right? Is making sure that you sort of get through these sort of lies that are out there, so to speak, right? Because there's just a lot of noise. Yeah. There's a lot of noise in the world today. And if you can get through a lot of that and get to a place to where you introduce yourself to you, right? I mean, some of us have to go through health scares for that to happen. I landed in an emergency room in California, right, for 7 hours. And it rocked my world. I was 51 years old, and they literally said to me, they said, "You're going to die way too soon if you don't change what you're doing." And I changed everything. But I changed everything because I had this sort of loop of lies going on in my head. I was lying to myself. I'm sure you come across this every once in a while, right?
Yeah.
But it's like you have this sort of society-driven narrative that just plays in your mind, and you get to a place to where you just like program yourself with it, and it can't continue. You have to, and by the way, if you don't interrupt it, if it doesn't stop, you really do end up dying early. You really do end up, sort of imploding, right? So that's a big part of what you all are teaching, and I think that's incredibly important. And And I'm so happy that you're doing this. I'm so happy that you're coaching. And I'm also incredibly proud of you for the podcast that you put together in your blog. I know you're helping people all around the world. And I just want to acknowledge you that I'm just super proud of you. And I'm so glad you made the decision that you did to get into this.
Yeah, and thanks for that. And again, I think that that's also what you talked about to self-care. That's what I'm doing. This journey started from self-caring. Started from, I care about myself. For one of the reasons I quit alcohol 4.5 years ago, completely took it out of my life because it wasn't good for me. Again, with the divorce, I'd made some rules. It's like, I don't want to live this way. And as you said, we might not die physically if we don't take our care for ourselves, but we will die in character and soul. And that's one of the things that the Stoics are really important, keen on, to make sure that we maintain who we are. And the world deserves the best version of ourselves. We were doing them a disservice if we weren't being best who we could be. And that doesn't
and you're
matter
helping people get there. That's the beautiful thing about what you're doing, is you're helping people get to a place to where they can be their best selves.
Yeah, and then have the people around them benefit. And being your best self doesn't mean that you have to be the new Elon Musk or have to be the inventor of this. And a lot of people talk about, leaving the herd, making sure that you go on your own. But that for me means just thinking about yourself. You can have a 9-to-5 job, if that feels what you should be doing. And if your priorities are, being with your family more, doing all these other stuff, and that job can provide that for you, great. But as long as you know you're wise, as long as you're doing it for the right reasons for yourself, that for me means leaving that herd, not just following other people or that narrative, what you talked about, blindly, because that really is something that kills the spirit.
Yeah, I totally agree. Okay, so let's say somebody's listening to this and they would like to talk to you about coaching them. How can they get in touch with you?
They can go to viastoica.com, where they can book a free consultation for half an hour. They can talk to me or Brendan or Bryce, the other 3 coaches. So you have pretty much the whole globe of time zones is covered. So you can talk to either one of them or to me. And then from there on, we will build a program, or we look at how much of the Stoic philosophy you actually want to apply to the coaching, or how much of the coaching you just want to specifically focus on some specific goals. So they can go there, and on the website they can find the podcast as well. But they can go to the Via Stoica podcast, or pretty much everything. You Google Via Stoica or you Google Stoic Life Coaching, you will find us right up there. And that's I think the easiest way to connect with us. And on social media, you can find me on Benny Via Stoica. You will find me there, Benny_Via Stoica, and get in touch with me. Send me a DM, and I'm always ready to listen and share your story.
That's cool, bud. Thank you so much for being here. We'll put a link to your website in the description, in the podcast description, episode description, so people can just click on it and go to you. But thank you so much for your time, and thank you for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. It was great fun, and I love talking about that story. You come across things that you can't remember yourself, and I like the questions you asked to really open those things up again.
Thanks, buddy. We hope you enjoyed another episode of the Mike Litton Experience. If you did, do us a favor, smash that subscribe button, tell your friends, family, and coworkers about our program, and wherever you get your podcasts, please leave us a rating. It helps us to connect with quality people just like you.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at Litton Realty. Want to meet with Mike? Check out calendly.com/Rio760.